Well, hi there. I'm Diana Montford, the world's first transgender television journalist. Born male, became female. Anyway, and you can see us on YouTube. You can see shows dating back to 1991. We are going to discuss the coming out and transition experience of transgender activist Ms. Sandi Nena Salas, who is going to tell us her story and how she came out, how she transitioned from male to female, and there might be something we can all learn from this. So here she is, Ms. Sandi Nena Salas.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So now tell us about your experience.
I'm come from a very strict Puerto Rican family, descendants. Grew up in East Harlem back in the 50s and early 60s.
How old are you now, if you don't mind?
I'm 67 now.
Okay.
And counting backwards now.
Yeah.
I can remember from age 3, I was fascinated with women's clothing. I would sneak and wear the hoop skirts and the poodle skirts and the slips that were hoops and run around and dress up. But my family talked about gay life a lot. They were very against it, even though my mother had many gay friends. But she would have a lot of conversations with me from very young that I can remember at 6 about respecting women, about respecting a woman's body, and not to ever have any homosexual.
No seas maricón.
Right.
Yeah. When my mother was angry with me, she'd say, no seas maricón.
And I always felt as a little kid that it was nobody's business. I was very shy when I was little, but I was out there running around. As a little kid, I used to wear hot pants, real short shorts, and I was always a chunky little kid. But unfortunately, in East Harlem, there was a lot of sexual abuse.
Yes.
You know, there was a lot of my uncle's friends, older, they were teenagers, older, that were always trying to have sex with me.
When I was 6 years old at Camp St. Joseph in upstate New York, a priest drugged and raped me in 1962.
Sorry to hear that, but that's, parochial schools were like that. I went to parochial school for 9 years. So I was made aware about sex very young.
Me too, yeah.
And unfortunately, I was a little kind of active very young.
Well, it's a way of finding approval,
But I, as a kid growing up, because my family and my grandfather, I was the first grandchild. The grandparents always snatch from their child.
Yes.
So I grew up 2 blocks away from my mother and father, my stepfather, and grew up in the household with my uncles, who unfortunately, one of my uncles was my first sex partner as a child.
How old was he?
He was about 15, 16, and I was about 5 or 6.
Right.
I didn't allow penetration. I was just something I always knew.
Well, that's why that priest knocked me out with a drug first.
So I was, with the onset of that, I was a little kind of promiscuous as a kid.
Oh, really?
Flirty.
I wasn't.
Flirty. I was very flirty.
I was too, and the priest said, "Oh, you were flirting with me." 6-year-old kids don't flirt.
No.
But I was scared off from sex by that priest. So
My uncles at
I got
that time.
over it.
My uncles at that time, they were gangs in Harlem, and they were gang members.
Yeah, but gangs then weren't gangs then were very different from gangs today. So
They fought against the Italians.
Yeah, and it was just different, and
and
people didn't die, right?
Chains
It was
and switchblades. And,
yeah, but people did not die.
Like now. Yes. And I was kind of attracted to a lot of the gang members. And they kind of knew it, and they flirted with me and played with me in the swimming pool, and that began, my life. But I always felt that it's nobody's business.
Do you feel that early childhood sex in any way predisposed you to being transgender?
No, I knew very young what I wanted
Me
to
too,
be.
yeah.
It was just.
Do you think we were both molested because they could see that we were basically little girls?
Yes, and a little chunky one. And in the
I wasn't
summertime,
chunky, but
I was chunky.
I had red hair.
I had little
Titties.
titties. Because I was fleshy.
I had a nice ass.
I was
still do.
yeah. And and like I said, I wore all these tight clothes, polo shirts that match with the shorts.
Yes,
and,
remember?
You
Yes.
know, running around.
Yes,
and the Johnny pumps, in the summer with the water in the street.
I loved that.
Yeah.
Oh,
just
it's too bad we're grown up because you can't do that when you're grown up. People look
they
at
don't
you
do
like,
it no more.
Yeah. Well, I think
Johnny
it's against the
pumps.
law anyway.
If it was against the law then,
Yeah,
they
but who
still got
listened?
the,
Yeah,
the
nobody
cans
listened.
and shot the water
Yeah,
off
and it was
stuff.
fun.
And I just remember that I was always attracted, to some of the teenage guys, because I was like 8, 9
Well, they
years
were
old then.
grown-ups to you then.
Yeah. But they were just so willing to teach me.
Oh, well.
They had me on the rooftops.
Oh,
And,
lucky you.
and actually one of them, he worked in a pet shop. And I was in the pet shop. My parents were outside, and I was in the pet shop with him down in the pigeon coop. And he was looking at me, and he was aroused looking at me.
Oh.
And I was a little kid, and I went right over to him, and he started kissing me and carrying on. And,
Well, I missed a
and
lot.
I didn't know what, how
See,
to
no,
say no.
when I noticed a man looking at me that way, I would look down and look away and get very like a nun. Like,
Yeah.
oh, no. Because the first time was terrible,
But after it, I would feel so ashamed that I did it. Growing
Do you
up
think
to
they
feels
did?
good. No, because they sought me. They
Yeah,
sought out,
exactly.
sought me out in the community and stuff.
Yeah.
Then my neighbor lived in the building, and I was 11, and he was 12, and no, he was 13, and I had such a crush on him, and then we started having our afternoon rendezvous.
That is good. That is, I shouldn't say
May
this,
he
but
rest in peace,
you are
because he
so
passed away.
lucky. I had a crush on a guy. He once lit my cigarette when we were both 14. I did everything I could think of to save that cigarette butt. It had been in his mouth, but I couldn't. I had to throw it out into the street because he was right there.
And he was going with this girl in the building, so I decided to go with the girl in the building too.
Oh, well, why not?
Keep it all in the
Flexibility,
family.
yeah. Why not?
But growing up, I always felt, because my family was so against it.
See, mine
so
was in favor of
Hispanic.
it. Like, they almost pushed me into it.
Mine.
My
was
mother
like-
used to buy me makeup that suited my coloring because she had black hair and black eyes. She was from Spain, so she would buy me like orange lipstick and green eyeshadow to go with my red hair.
So I never, felt that it was anybody's business. Growing up, I had my friends, and it was funny when I
Didn't they
graduated
call you
high
a
school.
fag or something?
Nobody would dare, because
You were tough.
no, not just thing. I had a snappy mouth,
Yeah, me too.
and I would say things, and nobody wanted to hear that. And then they were afraid of my uncles, because my uncles were, at that time, became drug addicts. They were gangsters. It was rough. So I was, on a pedestal in my family.
Good
The
for
first
you.
one.
And the
this-
first boy.
Huh?
First boy.
And, I was going to go to college, and I was going to
What
do
people who aren't
everything.
Latin don't understand is that the Latin son is the prince. Like, I could order my mother and grandmother around because I was the son. Like, I'm ordering a 60-year-old lady around and a 40-year-old lady around saying, move it. I want this now.
Yeah, I had two
And they would bring
homes.
it.
I had 2 homes. I had my mother's home, where I had my bed, and I lived with my grandparents. My grandmother, unfortunately, she died very young. She died from a heart attack when I was
Poor dear.
7. But
Oh,
I still,
traumatic.
stood living in the house. But where I really came out was, I've been living where I'm living for 63 years. So
Same
I grew up-
building?
Same building.
Wow.
Same apartment.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
How cool is that?
You know, so people saw me growing up, and there's some people in the building that knew me when I was little. So when I graduated in 1980, my stepfather, my father, told me to enjoy the summer, that he was going to pay my rent.
Ooh,
So I was like, okay.
nice.
I
Yeah.
was like, that's good. And I
Got his
started-
number? Ooh, all right.
And I was hanging out in Midtown, the famous 42nd Street, Times Square, and I met, I knew a lot of already transgender girls at that time.
Yeah.
They used to call them drag queens.
Like
back
Sylvia
in the
Rivera
day,
and everyone.
you
Yeah.
know. And I went with my girlfriends to the doctor, Dr. Schiffman's office. They were going to get their
Like your
hormone.
trans girlfriend.
Yes.
Yes.
They said, come with me, because they used to call me Baby back then.
Right,
That was
yes,
my
yes,
nickname,
yes.
Baby. And they said, come with us to the doctor. We hanging out, and it's summertime, and we having a good old time, and kiki and all that good stuff. And they says, you know, girl, you know you want to be one of us. Go take a shot. So I went in, took out my $15, gave it to the doctor, and took a shot. That shot turned me out. It just like, I didn't know what happened. We went to the movies, and I'm sitting in the movies. I'm like, what is this? Less than a month later, we're sitting in my house with my friends. I had a T-shirt on in there, and I'm looking at my chest, and it's hurting.
Right, yeah.
And all of a
At the
sudden,
beginning, they're
my
sore.
nipples said, boom, blew up. And I told my friend, I said, call the ambulance. Look, look, look. And everybody's laughing because it just looked like you had a balloon and you just blew up the balloon. And when you
Right.
deflate it, how it has that extra. And then I started going every 2 weeks to get my shot.
Good for you.
That was my real coming out when I transitioned, because I kind of did it in front of my family's face, no explanation.
My father drove me to the doctor. How old were you when you first transitioned?
1981?
That so was,
No,
Oh, I was
1981, so I was 30.
Oh, okay.
30. I was kind of old for transitioning. You know, when you look at transitioning.
Oh, I know people are
yeah,
much older
yeah,
who transition.
nowadays, but back then. and,
Yeah, I was 19 when I started
yeah.
taking hormones, but 15 when I transitioned, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when they started
Yeah.
to read me,
Yeah.
then I started taking hormones.
And I always thought that I wanted to, but I was like, I can't, my family, this. But then I already had my college degree.
Right.
You know, I was always thought, because I never wanted to be one of the girls out on the street, prostitution.
Which is fine
and all
if that's
that,
what
yeah.
you are. That's.
I tried it, but I didn't like it. There was a lot of things I didn't want to do.
Yeah, sure.
And you can't make money if you don't want to do certain
That's
things.
right.
You know, the tricks, you know.
A woman
They
named
want-
Taffy Tits Terrific told me at the 82 in 1974. She said, "Oh, you know, you could meet a lot of guys," and I said, "Okay, but I don't want to do it from behind." And she snapped at me. Well, then what are you going to do? You have no cunt. So, alas, I never found
So,
out. You know.
That's actually, you know, I didn't as a butch queen,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a gay man. I never came out and said anything. My friends, my small circle, they knew. People were trying to find out. It was funny because when I graduated high school, and I really came out at that time with some
Right,
friends,
right.
they took me to my first gay club in the village called the Bonsoir.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Barbara Streisand.
Yeah, she
sang
used to
there, yeah.
sing there, and that was on 8th Street in McDougal,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Latin. It was mostly people of color there,
Mm-hmm.
and it was another world. When I went there, it was on July 4th.
What year do you remember?
1980. I graduated. No, 1970. I graduated high school. I was 18 years old.
I graduated grammar school in 1970.
Oh, gee, you
I
had
was
to say that
14.
right now to me.
I was 14, so yeah.
Okay, and I went to the first gay club because I had a boyfriend in high school, and he broke up with me because he had this journalist that was taking care of his family, and the journalist was in love with him.
Oh boy.
And when the journalist found out about me, and he had told the journalist, you know, I was gay and this and that, and the journalist told him, I cannot take care of your family anymore. So he came to me, and Rob came to me and told me, he says, you have to understand. And I was devastated because
Sure.
he's actually the first guy
Your eyes
that
are tearing up now, and it's 50
I told
years
him,
later. Yeah.
he was the first guy that I told actually that I liked, men. I was attracted and stuff. You know what was even strange? In 1985, when I started working in public assistance, I go outside, have a new caseload,
Right.
and I look at this name. The initials were RB. I won't say his, full name. And I'm like, that sounds so familiar. I go outside, I call that name, and it was him. And he didn't recognize me because I was, already
girl, yes, a
transitioned
woman.
and everything. And, I look at him and I'm interviewing him. And I said, do you still live in LaSalle? And he said, yes. I says, we used to go to high school together. He said, high school? But you, a woman. I went to an all-boys school. I'm like, yeah, I know. And then we talked and stuff, but he looked terrible. I'm glad I left him. He left me.
I've had that experience too.
Because he had no teeth in his mouth.
Oh, God.
He really,
This guy was crazy in love with is a fat old Slav now, with old baggy eyes and a big belly and jowls.
But there's one person that I would like to see.
Bonsoir, Laurence. Yes.
There's one person, my first boyfriend when I transitioned, Rome. I would like to see him again.
Well, if he's
Rome,
watching,
if you out there, I still live in the same place.
there you go.
Yes.
Now, we have to face a lot of prejudice, even today.
Yes.
Have you ever, say, lost a job because of it, or been insulted because of being trans?
Well, when I first started working for the City of New York and Department of Social Services, I transitioned while I was working there.
And they
'Cause
couldn't
you
fire
wasn't-
you because
they
that's
couldn't fire
against the
you.
law,
That was
right?
against the law. I had my name changed, legal name change done. There, for the first, from 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, for the first 5 years, I was brought up on charges by gay men and females. Bogus charges.
Right.
In the ladies' room, getting undressed in front of everybody, throwing pantyhose. None of that was true. And thank God that I had the know-how, the perseverance to fight it, and every single case I won.
Good for you.
So after that, when I got promoted then to a supervisor one, I went to a new office. It was different people, but they were still chit-chat because in welfare, it's just like the street when you work in a welfare center. People gossip, people talk, people
In
are
every
ghetto.
office, every
It
office.
is just
Every
there.
business.
It was, they try to make the first 5 years of my life, working for the city. And I even got Mayor Koch involved. The Mayor Koch wrote them a letter and told them, you better back up. You're breaking every single law,
Good
city
for
ordinance.
him. And that's unusual because in 1965, Ed Koch, later to be mayor of New York, voted against a gay rights bill and participated in the closing of many gay bars. Apparently, he'd grown up by the 80s,
Well, we always had our ideas about Mayor Koch.
He's gay. Everybody knew it. Yeah.
Just like the governor of New Jersey that voted against every gay law in New Jersey.
Can you imagine?
And then he came out
Is
on
he the
TV
one who
with
says,
his
I
wife,
am a gay American? Yeah.
and divorced his wife and then became Episcopalian priest, minister.
You can't make this
You know?
stuff up, folks. Okay. But anyway. So, what do you say to young people out there who are thinking, oh, I want to be like those two women on TV. I want to transition. I want to be a girl, a woman. But I'm afraid because my family wouldn't understand. My friends will kill me.
Yeah. I lost a lot of family. I lost a lot of gay friends that when I transitioned, they were upset behind it because they knew me for so long one way, and then when they saw me this way.
Right.
What I say first and foremost, education. Because once you have your education, nobody can take that away from you. If I didn't have a college degree, I might have not have been able to stay working for the city of New York, because they would have found a way to fire me. But one, I was intelligent, I was educated, I was a fighter, I knew my rights, and I fought for them. And they had to back down.
Good for you.
Some of the worst people that brought charges up against me was from the LGBT community, mostly the G part, the L and G, because there was some lesbians on the job that were dressing as men. They were the worst to me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they would come in the bathroom when I was going in the bathroom and standing there at the door with their arms folded. Like, what am I doing in there? I'm like, I just didn't understand it.
Some lesbian once told me, you can't be a woman. I said, why not? She said, you have no uterus. Well, how about women with hysterectomies? You know?
How about women that had cancer and had to have all
Yeah,
that done, you know?
But anyway.
Yeah, it was very difficult, the first 5 years. But when they realized that every single EEO case, case that was brought against me and I had a hearing, the charges reversed on them. The federal government, the state of New York warned them that they had to stop making these false allegations
Good.
about me.
Well, yeah.
And I got two promotions after that, and they couldn't stop me because, hey, I was smart too.
Right, exactly.
I had an education. My mother told me from very young, if I die, you're going to be on your own, because I'm an only child. She said, do not depend on my family, because they don't take care of each other.
Right.
So I learned that very young to be a fighter and to fight for my rights. So what I tell the young ones, first of all, get your education and do your transitioning slowly. Do not, want to all of a sudden wear the short minis, become a little whorish because you think that's what the boys like or what you want to be.
We all go through that phase.
We all go through that phase. But understand, you have to have your education so that way you have a career. Because now, people like me and her open the doors up for you in the real world and the business world, where you can, get a job, where you can provide for yourself, where you can get married now, where you can have a family now. Back in my time, when I was 18 and 19, that was unheard of.
I know.
They would throw bottles at you in the street, if you didn't look good walking, as a woman. Even some of the ones that look good got chased, in the neighborhoods of Brooklyn, Harlem, the South Bronx.
Even in 1976, I was 19. I was in my whorish phase, looking like a slut. I'm walking in Midtown, no less. And this young woman of color, she's standing with, and she's glaring at me. And as I passed, I was still pretty tough then. I said, if you're going to say something, say it now. And I keep walking, and she screamed down the street, that's a man! Well, thanks, bitch. Fuck you.
Yeah, I used to get the song Got to Be Real.
Yeah.
When I passed by, the girls were saying, got to be real. I'm like, child. But it was funny, in my neighborhood, the guys that lived there, when some of the girls that came around to see them would try stuff, the guys would jump in for me and my friends and say, not that group. You're not bothering them.
Good.
So people always thought that I was conceited, but I was shy. So if I saw you over there, instead of going over, I would wave to you, hi, like that. So people said, boy, come over. I don't know everybody you're with. Yeah. When there's new people around, I'm not comfortable around new people. Oh. So I was shy, and they says, oh, you conceited, you stuck up. Once they got to know me, they were like, but you acted. I'm like, because I'm shy. Shy people do that.
That's right.
But my friends say, no, you extroverted, you're not introverted.
Well, you can be both, in different situations.
Yeah.
Now, can people contact you on email? So, like, if they want to transition or something, you can tell them, how to go about it.
Sure, why not? It's SANDIE2@AOL.com.
And if you're a person who is thinking about transitioning and you don't know where to begin and you are afraid that it will destroy your career or your social life or your love life or whatever, I mean, Sandy knows, and she's quite giving with her information. So.
And there's a lot of organizations out there for the trans community. There's quite a few organizations that you can just go on just Facebook and put in transgender, and a whole list of organizations will come up. Advocacy organizations to help you with your hormones, guide you through the system. There's many. Take advantage of it that's there, because a lot of the older girls, a lot of the older girls fought, for these services to be there. They just passed the bill, the gender.
Isn't that wonderful? Here in New York, the Democratic Assembly just passed the gender rights advocacy bill, something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying for 17 years, and we finally got it. So vote Democratic, folks. I mean, Trump wants us out of his life, out of the army, out of everything.
He wants us on an island.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wants to blow up the island.
Blow up the island,
But anyway, transitioning is something you have to do if you have to do it. So it's not a moral failing. Excuse me, there's no disgrace in transitioning. You're not less of a person. You're more of a person. If you feel the need and you transition, that means you're self-aware and strong and smart and not a disgrace, not a bad person. Some people say, how can you be so selfish, Oh, what will the neighbors think?
Especially your families that are very religious. They really have a difficult time. But you have many hospitals now. There's Mount Sinai Hospital has a big, here in New York has a big transgender.
And they will give you, Mount Sinai in New York will give you free plastic surgery, free sex change or sex reassignment, sex confirmation surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They'll give you anything, hormones. Anyway, my guest, we have like 50 seconds left. My guest has been transgender activist Ms. Sandi Nena Salas, who has been telling us her transition story, and a fascinating one it is at that, by the way. I hear these all the time on this show. Yours is one of the more interesting ones.
Thank you.
And interestingly, not unlike mine. So there you go. So anyway, I love you a lot. Trans or non-trans, hey, we're buds, right? So even if no one else loves you, I love you. And if you need to transition, go on the internet, find ways to do it. It's not as hard as you think it is. It's like jumping into cold water. The first moment is the difficult part. After that, you get used to it. Watch out, though, for too much eye makeup. That's a killer. But anyway, I love you a lot. See you next time. Sandy loves you a lot. We both love you a lot. See you next time. Bye.
Bye. Great.